A lawyer in Seattle is warning landlords that they will have to deal with nightmare tenants just like in California if they don't change immediately. But in my opinion, it's already too late. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's an opinion piece about the Seattle real estate market. So I've talked about Seattle a lot of times, just like I've talked a lot about California. And in my mind, they're about on equal ground in terms of which one has the worst landlord laws, the worst place for property rights. And in my opinion, yeah, like I said, they're about equal. We're talking about places that have rent control already implemented, extremely strong tenant protections, and they keep passing more and more laws because in their mind, the more laws they pass, the better things will become, right? So the person who wrote this article, I know they mean well, right? But from the outside looking in, there's no difference between these two places, right? And there's no way that landlords in Seattle are somehow doing better than the ones in California. And not in my opinion, okay. Maybe if you're up in Seattle, maybe you think that, hey, well, at least this isn't as bad as California is. Well, yeah, well, I think you are misjudging how bad it's gotten for you. Okay, so before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think and your opinion. And this could be from anyone throughout the entire country. Is Seattle as bad a place to be a landlord as California? Okay, and the reason I ask this is because maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe Seattle has more property rights, etc. Keep in mind that I've talked about different laws that they've passed up there, including stuff that prevents landlords from being able to look at the criminal backgrounds or the eviction histories of tenants. I've talked about the rent control, obvious up there, the strong eviction protections, including a protection against like school year evictions or winter evictions. This stuff is nuts. Okay, it's absolutely nuts. And I don't think that they are doing much better than a lot of the landlords in California are doing at this point in time. But anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from mynorthwest.com, and it says, gross. Lawyer warns Seattle's real estate tenant nightmares will get worse. I do agree with that. Things are only going to get worse. They're not going to get better. You never hear about them repealing any sort of laws. Instead, they think that passing more laws is the solution to the problem. And I've mentioned many times that I'm of the opposite belief, okay? We don't need more laws to spur development. We need to remove some of the garbage laws that they have in place now that make development so expensive. But anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. The crises around housing costs, nightmare tenants, and anti landlord policies are about to get worse for Washington. And if you think it's bad in Seattle, just wait until California inspires more extreme policies to hit our region, warned a California based attorney who has been dealing with a nightmare tenant saga of his own. Avi Sinai of the Sinai Law Group represents a Santa Monica landlord dealing with an untenable situation caused by progressive housing policies. His client has been in a legal fight to get the apartment back for 3 years. Sinai's client owns a 3-bedroom apartment. One of the landlord's previous tenants granted an unauthorized sublease without permission, and now the unauthorized tenant won't leave. Sinai calls her a professional tenant, describing her as someone who repeatedly goes through cycles of securing property, not paying rent, and then exploiting a legal system that protects tenants at the expense of landlords. Records show she has been evicted 4 separate times in 12 years. And I actually covered this story, okay? It was in a different article, but I covered the story about this tenant who is taking advantage of that situation. And this is a nightmare thing. The COVID-19 pandemic and all the eviction protections basically enabled a lot of these professional tenants, these scammers, these squatters, to stay in properties for long periods of time without the fear of being evicted. So landlords, they got screwed over completely. Meanwhile, they're sitting there thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt due to these tenants, right? And California, they don't even have anything in place to go after these tenants to punish them, because they make the assumption that all tenants are good, all tenants are these good innocent victims, Meanwhile, a lot of the people who were not paying rent for years on end, they were scammers. They were nothing but scammers. They realized they had the protections and they didn't stop, and they will never stop as long as these progressive left-leaning people keep pushing these idiotic policies. COVID era renters' rights initiatives and tenants advocacy groups were the primary source of ire for Sinai and the property owner. Sinai said the advocacy council representing the tenant is dragging out the legal process through a lot of motions and a lot of delays. We finally were able to get a jury trial about, I want to say, 5.5 months after we filed the initial lawsuit eviction, Sinai told the Jason Ranch show on AM 770 KTTH. The systems that we have here encourage that kind of delay, that kind of behavior, and that really puts a lot of strain on the system and on the taxpayer. The amount of time we wasted in useless hearings and stuff that should have never been given the time of day. And that he brings up a great point, something that I don't mention very often, right? But this isn't just a waste of money for the landlord. Okay, this is costing the taxpayer tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for each one of these cases. Remember, we're paying court staff, we're paying, judges and, just the law enforcement and everything, right? We're paying clerical people, and it costs a lot of money to go through all of this. Meanwhile, they're filing useless motions, stuff that means nothing, just so they can delay this process. So, yeah, it's costing thousands of dollars for taxpayers so that this person can, play around in the court system when they have no right whatsoever to stay in a property that they don't own. And that's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. But this is a landlord channel. But I cover issues that have to do with government, because people, they sit there and they wonder, well, why are my taxes so high? Why are my tax? Because you're paying for this garbage. Your property taxes, your sales tax, your state income tax, whatever, is so much because you have all of this bureaucracy trying to protect scammers, complete scammers who have absolutely no right to that property whatsoever. And so, yeah, they're doing no favors to anybody in this situation, especially not the landlord. The landlord takes it up the butt the most, okay, because we're the ones who have to pay our own attorneys thousands of dollars. We're the ones who deal with, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost rent, not to mention damages, because most of these tenants, they trash your place, they trash it. What a joke. All this is a nightmare. But anyway, let me continue with this article. So now I said it took 9 months of litigation to get a $25,000 judgment against the renter. There are zero consequences for not paying rent in LA. I mean that literally, Sinai said. You can choose not to pay rent, delay proceedings for months, and it would still make sense for the landlord to settle with you before trial, waive the rent, seal the record, and even offer you move out costs. Zero consequences. And he's absolutely correct. This is the situation that you create, a situation where it is cheaper and easier for the landlord to pay a huge amount of money to these scammers to leave. What a joke. And it's all created by government, all created by bureaucracy, by a bunch of, feel good morons who have no clue. Okay? If they realized what they were doing, like if they actually had to, abide by these same rules, like, oh, well, somebody just, you have to pay for someone else to live in their house for them off of your dime. They all of a sudden would be like, what are you talking about? I have to pay for someone else to live in their house on my, I have to go to work and pay their rent for them. What do you mean? That's not fair. But somehow they think it is fair for a landlord to do that. So yeah, what a complete joke. But anyway, it's a good article. It's a good opinion piece. The part where I disagree is that, as though Seattle somehow is in a better position right now than California. It's just not. Okay. It is a bad place to be a landlord. And in my opinion, like I've said many times before, go where you're treated better. Go to the South, go to the Midwest. Go, don't look in necessarily the biggest cities in the country. Yeah, there is appreciation there. Yeah, there is the opportunity to make a lot of money, but there's also the opportunity to lose and lose big.